Here's how my performance at work felt during my slump and after my slump. I was going through a lot in my personal life, so at work I felt super burnt out and distracted. Now on the other side, here's what I learned before and after my slump that helped me get out of it. When I was in my slump, I would wait a lot to feel motivated about the work that I was doing in order to do it. And actually, it just resulted in a ton of procrastination where I would have these intense short sprints of work. I would quickly lose steam when I lost the feeling, which I always did because feelings are so fickle, and then just burn out really quickly. Every time I burned out like that, I would feel the tension between where I wanted to be versus where I was at work, and that would just leave me feeling less and less motivated. I actually fell so behind in my projects that I started this intense process where I started tracking every single thing I was doing for my projects. So even something as small as I scheduled this meeting with a coworker of mine to talk about my project, I would write that shit down. And after doing that for several weeks, I quickly learned that motivation is not a feeling, but rather motivation is an action. What I mean by that is actions compound. So one small action leads to another small action, which leads to the next one. And I saw how all of those small actions actually build into momentum, and that momentum becomes motivation. Instead of waiting for motivation to strike, I started asking myself, what can I do today to be more action-oriented in my day-to-day? Re-emphasize where that first small action can take you more than the feeling of motivation. In my slump, I found myself spinning a lot where I would try to find this end-all be-all solution. Oftentimes at Google, we are piloting very new initiatives, which means that more often than not, there is no template or rubric to follow. Some hypothetical examples of this could be, how can we better measure return on investment on the dollars we're spending? Whether it could be spend with influencers, spend on sports sponsorships, or social media platforms. I would actually leave feeling like the problem is unsolvable, there's nothing I can do, and it would actually make me slump even harder in defeat. In the midst of all my spinning, I actually had a very simple thought, which was there might not actually be this perfect solution if everyone else in the industry is also trying to figure this out right now. And maybe what I needed to do was figure out the in-between step between the problem I was trying to solve and the perfect solution, which was what can I do today that is achievable that will get me a step closer to this ideal state. Now, on the other side of things, I wish I could have told myself this back then, which was instead of trying to solve for everything all at once, focus first on what's achievable through bite-sized next steps. You'll know you did this when the solution becomes much more straightforward and tangible. At the end of the day, it's important for all of us to know our ideal state because it's that North Star that ensures we're headed in the right direction. But from there, set the focus more to what's possible. And for me, that meant working within the limits I had, which was the limited knowledge, the limited experience, and the limited data that I had today to find the next actionable solution, which was a step closer to the ideal. When I was in the thick of my slump, I would feel so stressed out about falling behind expectations, whether that was reflected in a performance review or direct feedback. During the peak of my stress, I actually started to ask myself, why am I stressing myself out so much? And is this actually worth all the stress I am self-inducing? Realized I needed to focus on what I could actually control. And I did that simply by changing the question from, am I meeting expectations, to how can I reach my own potential? At the end of the day, I don't have to prove anything to anyone, including myself. But I also want to acknowledge and humbly be open to the growth opportunities that come my way that take me closer to my potential. That subtle shift in perspective drastically changed my experience because I was taking ownership over my own potential instead of letting other people do that for me. Another insight that helped me was actually this graph, which explains why you might feel so behind with your own expectations and your potential. The graph shows how as your confidence builds, it's actually normal for your confidence to diminish. And that's because you become hyper aware of the gaps you see in yourself and you become more aware of the other possibilities out there. That feeling is actually a natural part of growth, and if you're feeling that way, you're probably headed in the right direction. One of the things I've realized is that our performance at work is not a true benchmark of how we're actually doing in our careers. For example, performance reviews in and of itself are not completely an accurate reflection of your work because There's so many like HR policies and weird HR tactics that exist to not promote you because of like some arbitrary rule. All that to say, reframing my mindset in these simple ways really helped me get out of my slump. And I hope you can find some comfort and encouragement in this video too. Thanks so much for watching!